Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm going to go ahead and get started because we have a number of panelists today, and I want to make sure everybody has time. So welcome. Thanks for coming. This is results from a study that Sarah Wambold and I led with we conducted a study with two dozen museums and cultural organizations across the country. This was not just a research study, but a community of museums looking to better understand their online audiences. The project surveyed the motivations of visitors to museum websites based on the framework of visitor motivation developed by museum researcher John Falk. In his book, Identity and the Museum Visitor Experience, Falk identifies 5 key types of visitors who attend museums and the internal motivations that drive repeat visitation. These motivations are explorer, facilitator, experience seeker, professional hobbyist, and recharger. These formed the basis for our survey questions. This is what the survey looked like. It appeared on every page of the website being tested, pinned to the bottom of the window. Users click it and it opens up. The survey options were consistent across every institution. The fonts and colors were customized to match each site's individual design. When the visitors chose a motivation, it set a custom dimension in Google Analytics. We could then filter all of Google Analytics reports through a motivational lens. The survey dates were slightly different for each institution, but most collected at least 12 weeks of data over the winter-spring of 2015-16. Today we have a selection of the participants who are going to share with us what they learned from the study and how that's impacted how they approach their work. We have Tricia Robson of the Fine Arts Museum San Francisco, Jessica Warchall of the Andy Warhol Museum, Jacques Haba of the Nasher Sculpture Center, Susan Edwards of the Hammer Museum, Alli Burness of the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences in Sydney, Jonathan Munar of Art 21, and last but not least, my co-project leader, Sarah Wambold of the Clifford Still Museum. So first up, Tricia.
Hi, so I'm Tricia, and I'm with the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco. For those of you who are unfamiliar, and this is sort of a problem for us locally as well, the Fine Arts Museums represents, I'm trying to move the slide here. The Fine Arts Museums represents the DeYoung Museum in Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, a pretty large encyclopedic institution. It has everything from African and oceanic art to colonial American to modern and contemporary. And we also run the Legion of Honor Museum, so a little bit smaller, this neoclassical building, a little tucked away in San Francisco with a pretty classic European and ancient collection. So starting out, what we knew about our websites, and our FAMSF.org domain encompasses our institutional website for FAMSF, the DeYoung, and the Legion. We get fairly large visitation, about 4 million unique sessions per year. Pretty average pages per session. People aren't lingering all too long on our site. And in terms of visitation, according to our analytics trends, most people are coming to our visit pages to purchase tickets, check out our exhibitions. Pretty visit-focused or visit-centric. So going into the visitor motivation survey, for us, there are a lot of benefits to participating. The biggest one being institutional benchmarking. So in web years, our website is pretty ancient. We haven't had a redesign in over 6 years. We can get a lot of information from analytics, but perhaps users have different motivations than what we're offering them. We could use some content rehabbing and strategy. We're currently working on that, but to get trends across other museums would be very valuable for us. Also testing our assumptions. What people want to do on our site is often very different from where they land. And in terms of getting internal buy-in and project support, and that will kind of be the focus of the end of this presentation. So our participation in the survey was 17 weeks in the late spring, early summer. And we got about 2,500 unique people coming to participate in the survey. So we got a pretty large kind of swatch. Our first question is, why are people coming to our site? That's the most basic question. And really a landslide, roughly 60% of people across the Legion and DeYoung and our sites as a whole are really coming for this facilitator group to plan their visit. Another way to look at this data, again, kind of tapping in more closely to the page views. So really our primary motivation, it matches our analytics assumptions. But once we dug in a little bit deeper, we noticed that those facilitators, while they're coming in large numbers, they're not staying super engaged on our site. So if we dig into that question a little bit more deeply, who is sort of spending more time on our website, and how can we help facilitate content for those groups? So if we look at the data, sort of sweeping, we saw the largest pages per session rates for our professional groups, so really people entrenched in the field, and also explorers, so maybe less professionally motivated, but people who are enthusiasts and maybe want to get to that higher level. This is sort of one view of looking at our most engaged visitors, and you see pretty similar rates when you actually look at time on site, with that professional group being pretty much double what that planning length of time on our site is. So digging into this a little bit more deeply, so we kind of get a sense that most people are coming to plan their visit, and they duck out quickly, and there are some sort of core engaged groups. But we wanted to look, too, at sort of how these motivation categories impacted sort of specifically what content sections and pages people were visiting. So if we dig into that a little bit more deeply, looking at our main museum homepages, and this matches museum sort of web analytics for us, everyone is coming to or lands, not everyone, but the vast majority of people are visiting our homepages. And I was really it kind of confirmed our suspicion that facilitators are really coming for a primary focus. They're looking to get some information about hours and exhibitions, buy a ticket, and move on. So our highest sort of purchase group is the facilitator group. And kind of looking a little bit further, exhibition pages, visit pages, really popular amongst that facilitator group. But I was surprised to see that shop was mostly professional. So they're not just coming to kind of stay engaged in the field, but that was sort of a purchase group that was unexpected for us. And we're looking at unique ways to kind of tap into that market. So another interesting finding. In terms of looking at how people were navigating our site, that main facilitator or visit planning group is really, they're sticking on our home pages, our exhibition pages, and visit pages, just as you would expect. And you see a little bit more mixed engagement with those explorers, and I should say also professionals. They're kind of digging deeper into our events, shopping, learning, or education pages. So all of this really, again, confirmed many of our assumptions. It offered a platform to relate against other peer institutions, and Sarah will talk about this more, but many other museum websites were very visit-focused in terms of visitation models. And the biggest thing for us is really using this data to gain support internally to help refresh our website. So we're currently, just really quickly, it's not a whole redesign, we're hoping that will come, but really reskinning our websites visually. We're way overdue for a change, and really the 60% number, the 60% of our visitors coming to plan a visit, was our director latched onto that, and it helped us. That's really how we got buy-in for the project. So I'll just fly through these slides since I'm running out of time. But our whole model, working with an agency and kind of refreshing the look and feel, is very visit-centric. How do we create content and have a strategy around that visitation, really focusing on key pages based on this study and sort of larger trends. So I'll kind of fly through the rest. But overall, really important findings, helpful to kind of cross-check against other museums, and helped us get buy-in for a project. So that's end of my slides.
Hello, I'm Jessica Warchall. I am from the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh. Hold up here. And We looked at our VMS results in our website redesign, which we are going to start very shortly. I think next week is our kind of official kickoff of our redesign process. And I'm going to give you just a quick, brief overview of the Andy Warhol Museum. We were founded in 1994. We're part of a 4-museum system. We have an art museum, natural history, science center, and us. And we tell our story of Andy Warhol very well in our physical space. We start at the top floor, our 7th floor of the museum, and tell the story on the way down through the decades. And our special exhibition space is on our 2nd floor. And looking through our space and how we redeveloped this about 2 years ago, we don't do the same kind of good digital storytelling online. So our Warhol.org stats, I just pulled a snapshot here from kind of a year. And we're thinking about in our website redesign, we kind of thought that we have 2 main visitor groups. People are coming to the museum to visit. We have a lot of tourists and locals, but mostly a tourist audience. And researchers and educators looking for information about Andy Warhol, classroom resources, how to schedule time in our archives. And this snapshot right here, again, just the thing that I want to point out a little bit here is the time spent on our pages. The 49 seconds on collection pages average is terrible, and our bounce rate's really high. And we're looking at this as an indication that people are probably not finding what they're needing. They're leaving the pages, and that's something that we absolutely need to solve. And early on in this process, when we implemented this survey, we also did a little bit of user research, which we will continue to do. But the very initial user research showed us that people are bouncing from a page and going to Wikipedia and Artsy to learn about Andy Warhol. And that's not something at all that we want to do, or we want to see happen, because we want to be that place. So when Sarah approached me to participate in VMS, I thought, absolutely. At that point, I think I was the only one thinking about a redesign yet then. But we absolutely needed to get some more data to present to senior staff to start thinking about these things. And we thought, this is a really great opportunity for us to do so. So really, it was just kind of an opportunity for us to gather this data. We were on this. We did the survey on our website for about 6 months, which is longer than I think most of the museums in this study, but it was really unobtrusive, and it really didn't matter that it was there. We loved it, so we kept it. And looking at our data, we really got the confirmation we were looking for. We really got the confirmation that the facilitators, people planning a visit, and professionals are the ones coming to our site. We had almost 40% facilitators, people planning a visit, and about 22% motivated to visit for professional reasons. So that makes up 61% of the survey respondents. And that 61% is huge to tell us, and really help us kind of move forward in our website redesign. And it really influences our approach, which I'm going to talk about. But first, before we moved on a little, we dug deeper to see what these professionals and facilitators are looking at. And professionals have more page views per session, right? It makes sense. They're digging deeper. They're taking a little deeper dive. But again, the bounce rates really high. Our collections pages are not robust. Our biographies are not readable. Our education resources have amazing information. They're wonderful repositories, but they're not easily navigated or searched. So this is a problem that we absolutely need to solve. And we also, in this process, really wanted to confirm that the professionals and facilitators, that they define themselves as such, we're actually going to the places that you'd expect them to go, and it definitely was confirmed. Professionals were going to the collection and education sites, and then facilitators to the visit pages and calendaring pages. And this snapshot from our homepage right now is terrible. And that's one of, it's kind of wonderful that I snapped the shot for this, because that's how we feel right now. But it also doesn't make sense. It doesn't mean anything. And part of this, maybe our bounce rates, like, I'd probably bounce from that, if I'm looking for information about the museum when I come to that. But so after all this data that we're going over and we're looking into, we really decided to go with a 2-phase design process. With that, focusing on that 61% of the visitors, the facilitators and the professionals. And the 2-phase design process, the first is a communications tool, and the second is the collection resources side of things. And like I said, we're great with storytelling in our building, but we need to do a better job online. We're placing importance on ticketing. We want a robust ticketing system, dynamic calendaring, a clean functional design allowing visitors to access the most important information, hours, admission, location. No, we're not in Philadelphia. And our attendance is driven by tourists. So we really want to focus on doing more user research on that tourist group as well. And accessibility. We're focusing on accessibility in our first communications tool, phase 1 design as well. In every step of the process, we're going to be focusing on accessibility. And then phase 2, we're going to focus on those collections, getting our robust collection online and our education resources. In our museum, we hold more than 9,000 works of art, 4,000 films and videos, and we have such a small portion online that's actually accessible in a meaningful way. So that's something we're really going to dig into later. And real quick, just one more thing I want to mention. It's really important to mention that we're not totally skipping collections and education resources. We're kind of using this phase 1 communications tool as a case study for how we want to work on those important aspects in phase 2 to kind of redesign small chunks now and see how people do interact with them and relate to them so we can do some more user testing to figure that out in the long run. And that's that.
How's this set up? Okay. Let me see. Can you guys hear me? Okay. I'm Jacques Haba. I'm from the Nasher Sculpture Center in Dallas. We joined the survey. I think a lot of this is going to be similar to what everybody else has said. We joined the survey to learn more about our content, to discover additional insights into what visitors saw as the purpose of our site, as well as start a dialogue about benchmarking to see what those common meaningful metrics are across institutions. This survey was posted from December 2015 to April. Here we kind of have a snapshot of the overall sessions. It doesn't give too much insight until we start actually drilling down into a segment. So facilitators make up most of our survey participants, about almost half of them, and then followed by professionals. But I wanted to know what the facilitators could tell us about our content. So what we see is that the sessions were focused primarily on planning a leisure activity. This holds true to Falk's motivation. We also see two types of planning emerging. One is the general visit, and the other is the planning for a specific event. We observed that there wasn't really a deep dive into additional resources that might have been helpful for their planning. So we saw that as an opportunity to create awareness that wasn't being met. And I'm thinking in terms of like our family guides and some of our learning materials that we have. We also see that our visitor loyalty with this segment was really low. We only had one session. That's kind of disturbing to us because if they're planning a visit, we hope that they come back to the website after their visit, maybe to relive the experience or engage in something that they've seen. So who made up the facilitator group? We see primarily female between 25 and 35 years old. However, this group wasn't the most successful demographic when it came to our goals. What we actually found was that the 45 to 50-year-old women had more goal conversions. So for us, we try to measure our site based on what's actually converting. And so this one became a more meaningful segment when we looked at facilitators. So we also dived into Google's data, which we kind of pivot off them, and they allow us to see kind of interests that this facilitator group falls into. And what we see is, again, this leisure activity. We're seeing entertainment and travel as their kind of primary interests. We also see education, which makes sense because museums as learning institutions. When we hear travel, we think, okay, well, we're going to have a lot of national and international traffic. That was our expectation. The reality is that no. What we find is that a majority are within Texas, and a majority are actually within the DFW area. So what this tells me is that it doesn't mean that we're not serving travelers, but what it tells me is that most likely if they are traveling, they're not planning their visit until they get to the DFW area. So there's no long-term planning ahead of time. So this local-centric idea was also reinforced by the local media that we see as our referral traffic. We see DFW Child, Dallas Observer, all being sources of referrals to our site. So where are they spending most of their time? 60% are just planning that general visit. And this is kind of exactly where we expect them to be. We're seeing that they start on the homepage or within the visit section, and they're staying kind of within that visit section. A small percentage actually branch out and start to look at the art, but then about the fourth interaction, about half that initial traffic is gone. With the other portion, the ones that are actually looking for specific or planning for a specific event, we don't see them step outside of our engage section, which is our calendar section that has the event postings. So we essentially see them come and immediately leave. So what does this get us to start thinking about? We start to think about like time on site. If we're looking for quick logistical information, which is what the facilitator was telling us, then we need to consider how we're going to increase the visitor's value and consolidate that content. There's no need for them to go to several pages if we can consolidate it to one. So we also know that these visitors are primarily interested in, knowing who these visitors are primarily from their interests. It helps us tailor how the content is written to appeal to what interest type. So I'm thinking in terms of how we write the content to maybe match some of the existing studies out there, like culture segments. At the same time, we present the content. Is there a way to cultivate visitor loyalty? I'm thinking in terms of maybe episodic, or we have reoccurring events. So is there a way to make sure that trigger keeps them coming back to the next event, or re-engaging them in a past event? I'm thinking in terms of like our 360 series, a lecture series, where we do video record them. So on the event page, having the past event also be present so that it re-engages them in additional content that we've already created. So there is also gaps in this standalone kind of quantitative look. We also wanted to introduce some more qualitative surveys to support this. And then just being able to compare and learn with other cultural institutions to help us better meet the needs of our audience overall. So I think the same type of audience that we're trying to attract is the same type of audience that you guys are trying to attract. So want to talk about Google, talk about benchmarks, send me an email.
Hello, everybody. Whoa, I love it. Halloween. How do I do? I have to click like. Oh, wow. That's why I'm using the cursor. Okay. I'm Susan Edwards. I'm from the Hammer Museum in Los Angeles, and I'm going to talk really fast. The Hammer Museum is a contemporary art center and museum in Los Angeles. We're affiliated with UCLA. We have a gorgeous courtyard where people come and hang out, and they eat lunch, and we have performances and concerts. We also have, oh, this is freaking me out. We also have a collection. We have 5 collections that actually span from Renaissance to present. We also have a vibrant contemporary art collection and contemporary art exhibiting program where we highlight contemporary upcoming artists and artists from Los Angeles. Our Made in LA biennial, maybe you may know it, it highlights LA artists. We also do lots and lots of public programs. So we have over 300 public programs a year. Some of them are in the courtyard, their concerts, their performance. We also bring in speakers and lectures and have screenings, and we put together people like Mark Bradford with Anita Hill and have them talk about race and art, and we live stream it all. And we're free. In 2014, we became free. We got a grant to do this, and we also started at the same time a free membership program, not unlike the DMA Friends, which doesn't exist anymore. And the reason that we joined the visitor motivation study were some of the same things we've already heard from these guys, like benchmarking, understanding our online visitors beyond what you can get from Google Analytics. We are also doing a little mini redesign of sections, but what I'm going to focus on today is this parallel project we were doing that was also using the Falk types. We were trying to do on-site interviews, and we were already doing that when I found out from Jacques about the VMS study, and I asked, oh my God, yes, please, let's be involved. So I'm going to talk more about that. But first, I will overview our VMS numbers. We had it running for about 13 weeks. We saw about 1,700 sessions on the site, which correlates to around 1% of the sessions during that period. And just like the other guys have said, the people who filled out this survey were very engaged. So they were staying on the site for 4 to 5, 6 minutes, whereas our average site time visit is 1.5 minutes. So something to think about, the kind of data we're getting here. So here's our pie chart. Everyone's going to have a pie chart, I think, today. And we also have, it's the facilitators and the professionals, the orange and the red there, that was also big for us. The facilitators was surprising for us. The professionals were surprising for us because we don't have much stuff on our site. It's not very deep. We have a lot of flat exhibition pages. We don't have a collection online. So we're like, what are they looking at? And if you look at the average duration of time people are spending on our site, it's the professionals and the experience seekers who are spending a lot of time on our site. We're like, what are they looking at? So I tried to map it. Pretty much every single type went through the site with the same sort of pathway through the normal museum website sections, the visit section, the exhibition section, our programs, your collection. I also added our Made in LA exhibition here. We have a special section just for that biennial. And the experience seekers on the bottom here were spending all their time in the exhibitions and 10% of their time in the Made in LA show page, which hadn't opened yet. And it wasn't even, there wasn't much there. Like the show was still 2 months away from opening. This was really interesting to me because most museums, as John Falk has said, do not get experience seekers to them unless you're the Getty or the Met or the Louvre. But clearly we have a destination program that we're running that people are coming to us for. The professionals were the most likely of all these groups to go to our About Us page. Kind of makes sense. Okay, so our parallel study. We wanted to learn more about our free membership program because we had been running it for about a year. And I had been at the Getty previously, which some of you may know, and we had used John Falk's user types combined with a design thinking interview process in order to develop user types at the Getty. So I basically took the same thing over to, I see. I'm seeing notes here. Okay, that's what's freaking me out. So I took it over to the Hammer because we wanted to interview people and find out why they were coming to the Hammer and why they were joining this free membership program. We interviewed people, we did empathy maps, we did point of view statements, and we used those point of view statements to come up with our user types that our Hammer users fell into. And you'll see here the John Falk types, the rechargers, explorers, professionals, facilitator. Missing from this is experience seeker. We did not interview any experience seekers. We interviewed 12 people. That doesn't mean they don't come to the Hammer. It means we didn't interview them at the time. And mostly rechargers and explorers that we interviewed on site. What else do I want to say about this? Oh, so regarding facilitators, so according John Falk's definition of a facilitator is someone who is coming primarily for someone else. So it's a mother bringing their kids. It's someone who wants to bring their best friend to see an exhibition. And their primary motivation is not for themselves, but for this other person. And the way the question on the VMS study was phrased was, are you here to plan a visit for someone else? I think I might be garbling that, but we think maybe that a lot of people who are just planning a visit in general were checking that option because it was the only option for someone who's just planning a visit. So the facilitator one is confusing us a little bit, but I'm gonna keep talking about this. Let me go back for a sec. We didn't interview very many of our earned members here. We ended up not running into very many of them. We learned a lot about our regular visitors, but we were like, we still need to know about our earned members. So we took these user types and we applied them to a survey that we did of just our earned members because we have all their emails. Oops, I'm still going backwards. And we did a survey. And we had 14% pickup, which was great. And one of the questions on that survey, I copied what you guys did for VMS, and I mapped questions on the survey to those user types we had at the Hammer. So we could see of our earned members, where do they fall within the Falk types. And here's my graph of that, which is a little more complicated because we had subtypes within the Falk types. The blue is the explorers. The next one is the orange, the professionals. And then green is rechargers, and purple is facilitators. No experience seekers, but we didn't ask the question on the survey, and we should have. Now, the explorers came up on the VMS study. So I did a comparison. So this is a little scary because these are not equivalent surveys. We can't really compare them, but just for interest's sake, the top is the survey we did, and then this is the visitor motivation study. You'll see this giant purple thing on the visitor motivation study, which was facilitator. Facilitators didn't really show up at all on ours. But everybody we interviewed in the interviews came with somebody, pretty much. And the people on our survey, 65% of them said that sometimes they do come with other people. What does this mean? I don't know. I've lost all my notes. The professionals, we have a lot of professionals coming on site as well. But yeah, okay. So our insights, our final insights. My insight number one was we do have a destination. So experience seekers tend to go to only destination websites or destination museums, and we are not a destination museum, but our exhibition for our Made in LA biennial is a destination. That was a huge aha for me. So knowing this, can we target that audience? Can we think about how we can engage them in that way? Insight number two, we need to consider facilitators. So people who are coming for a primary motivation to bring someone else. When we were interviewing people, we saw that they were bringing other people, but it wasn't the main reason they were bringing people. Are you ready for this? Excuse me. So we think this is a very strong secondary motivator. And we had conversations about having a family membership. All of our memberships are for individuals, and maybe we need a family membership. Maybe we need a membership for people who need that third place where they go and they hang out and they talk to people about cool ideas. Insight number three is a total duh. On-site visitors, the motivation to go on your website and the motivation to go to your physical site, it's different. It's like, duh, I should have known that. But I think some of us, and I have been guilty of thinking of these people as one big mass who are the same. So let's remember that they're different and think about what is the relationship between your on-site visitors and your online. Thank you.
We're a huge panel, so we're switching now. Yeah. Doing them again.
Okay, so I'm just trying to find the next slide. What would be the... Click on the icon. So I just hit that. Excellent. So I pick up really nicely from where Susan left off. I'm talking about the VMS at the Museum of Applied Arts and Sciences in Sydney, which we all might know and love as the Powerhouse Museum. I haven't actually been there for 6 months now, but 12 months ago, as the digital producer, I introduced the VMS to the museum. At the time that we implemented the VMS on our website, the marketing team came to us and said, oh, but we just decided that we wanted to implement culture segments throughout the museum to inform programming, that kind of thing. We're still working out how to do that. So myself and our senior UX consultant, Meena Thamaraja, we looked at them both together, and as we know, we have 5 fairly distinctive segments. We felt they were more useful for predicting the kinds of things audiences in these segments would want to see, the kinds of experiences they would be searching for when they come to the museum. So more of a predictive purpose. The segments, we felt they were really heavy on description. The segments didn't seem as distinctive from each other as forks. And of course, they focus on arts and culture generally, not as specifically on museums. So we tried to map the two of them. It was messy, it kind of worked. Most notably, there were some that didn't map to each other at all. And interestingly, for our results, professional didn't have any match in the culture segments at all. The other complicating factor was that we had 2 websites going at the time. The Powerhouse is redeveloping its website bit by bit, taking from the old and adding to the new website. So in this iterative process, which I really admire. At the time, and still currently, we have exhibitions, event information, visit information, educational programming information on our new website, and we had 66% facilitators using that site. That's not surprising. On our old site, we mainly have our online collection, and this is, just to jog anyone's memories, the first museum collection that went up online under the auspices of Seb Chan and Dan Collins, who's sitting in the room at the back. VMS said we had 66% professionals and hobbyists. They were coming to research a topic. It's really a no-brainer. It was a nice little mirror to the 66% facilitators on our new site. So we then started to dip into some qualitative data to match up with the quantitative from the survey. We interviewed 5 people who fell into the professionals and hobbyists segment who were coming to research a topic on the online collection. And interestingly, they all revealed in their own way that they wanted to be inspired. They fell into that recharger segment as well. And so the web team then unpacked a whole range of tasks that people who fell into the recharger or professional segment might be wanting to achieve when they come to the online collection. So we used the jobs to be done methodology for this. We were not using the assumptions that come with the archetypes in personas and user stories. We were pairing the motivational purposes of the 4 segments down to the situational motivations in a job or a task to be done. Our product manager, including Dan, who's here, helped to decide that these were the 2 key tasks out of the many that we explored that could inform a redesign for our online collection. And that then becomes unpacked into user flows. We have 2 user flows, one for each of the jobs to be done that we unpacked. And these user flows include how these people who are trying to achieve these jobs might come to the online collection, how they might find it, and what kind of features in our new online collection might help them achieve their task. The next steps is a design sprint that will be happening this month. That will start to develop prototypes and early wireframes. So that's the overall process we've gone on to go from that broad surveying of all website visitors down to some actionable design insights that can inform a redesign of our online collection. And just to summarise our overall insight from participating in the VMS project, the question that I keep being asked before, during, and even today about the VMS project is, fork segments are applicable to online visitation. I hadn't even thought of it like that. Does it work? Does it translate? And absolutely yes. We found that the key motivation for using a museum collection physically coming to the museum is for social purposes. Our 5 researchers who were using the online collection, only one had visited, and that was for social purposes, not research purposes. And of course, 66% of facilitators are using that visit information on our online website. In terms of museum collections being online, it really caters to that more solitary research, information searching motivation. And there was some other data that was backing that up, the 66% professionals filling out the VMS survey, and 4 of our interviewees had not visited our on-site building at all and had only used it for research purposes online. So that's the perspective from the Powerhouse Museum.
Hi. I don't have any pie charts, so you guys were expecting pie charts. Kidding. Please hang around. So hi, I'm Jonathan Munar. I come from an organization called Art21. Art21 is a 20-year-old nonprofit contemporary art organization. We're most known for a television series broadcast on PBS here in the US, called Art in the 21st Century. We just broadcast our 8th season in September. We've been on PBS for 15 years now, which is crazy to think about. But one thing that I'll underscore, and this is something that I'll repeat several times during my little 5 minutes, is that we are not a museum. So it's an interesting it's interesting to participate in a survey like this because it's one thing that really separates us from a handful of a majority of the participants. So why did we participate in VMS? One, we were already considering, we were already into a redesign. We had an RFP already written out. The timing was perfect when Sarah approached us to participate in this project because we already knew that we wanted to gather some data about the types of audiences, the motivations that our audiences were having when they visited our website. But again, R21 is not a museum. So we are not a museum, but we share a lot of the same goals, a lot of the same ambitions, and a lot of the same challenges that museums have. So we're in part interested to see how we stacked up as an organization next to museums, and at the same time, how can we contribute to the greater field when it comes to what we do on our website versus what museums do on their website. So this kind of shows in our data that I'm going to focus on the two top groups that we had in our respondents. But the real big thing for us and what separates us as an organization as compared to museums is that our facilitator group was actually the lowest, whereas for most museums it was the highest, and that's just like duh. We don't have a physical space. There's no real visit to plan for. But it's interesting to think about that type of separation, but it really lets us focus in on okay, we know that we have these two top groups here. We have professionals and we have explorers. And we know from data, from kind of digging into this data, that those professionals are educators, that a bulk of the pages that these professionals are landing, that their top landing pages and their next path pages were education resources on our website. I should preface that by saying the website that we put this on houses everything that we do. So it's 100 hours of video, 100 plus hours of video, and a bunch of education resources to complement all of this video content. So it's everything that R21 produces, pretty much. Professionals, they're educators going here for educational resources. Explorers were folks that are landing on artist pages. So all of the artists that we featured in our series have their own artist pages. These are indexes into the content. A bulk of those landing pages were the explorers. And high engagement, we'll jump into that a little bit later. But a few takeaways from what we observed. Again, this was trying to get us to understand what our relationship is to museums and what our role is in relation to museums. We knew this. We had a hunch of this going into the visitor motivation survey, but this kind of just backed us up that our audiences are coming to our website because they see our website as a content resource. That we are specifically putting up everything that we do for the sake of audiences. We don't have a physical place to put our content. So R21.org is primarily a content destination, whereas most museum sites, we've seen from a lot of the data here that most museum sites are visit playing tools that also have a lot of great content. So it's interesting to start thinking about, if we as an organization are putting up everything that we produce onto our website, museums do that to a certain degree, with their online collection, but, using that same mentality, how can things kind of shift, for museums? Something to think about. Not something for me to answer for you guys. So on top of that, we knew we started to extract some goals for our website redesign. And one of those is to better facilitate educators. Knowing that a core of our audience are educators, we want to make sure that we were putting that material right in front of them and serving that community as best as we could. So it's placing content more thoughtfully, and it's really thinking about developing more tools and points of interaction for educators on the site. We saw from the Explorer category that there's a lot to dig into. There's a lot of pages to dig into. So we just want to make it exploration. We want to encourage more exploration throughout the site. So I'm going to show very quickly, this is our current website. I'm going to show a little bit of how we've started to act on some of these things through our redesign. We're in the design phase of our website right now. This is our current website. There's a video page, pretty straightforward. It's like the video and it's a description and things end there. So, yep, there's the description, things end. This is a prototype of our redesigned website, not launched yet, coming in January. You guys are the first ones to see this outside of our 21 staff. But you'll see that same video, we started to add these modules in here that made a video page not be a dead end, but to encourage this discovery, to start cataloging manually every resource that we have connected to this website, to this piece of content, placed right on that page. So you're arriving on a video page, but you're still discovering more related content that we have on the site. It's a common thing, of course, but it's something that we didn't practice beforehand. So it's new to us. More modules. One last thing is that we, like everyone said, respondents are highly engaged. These engagement numbers are just crazy. These are our site averages for that same period, and you just see how bonkers it is, how long people are staying on the site, how many pages they're even digging into. So we thought from this, since they're so highly engaged, since we saw that these respondents are so highly engaged, how can we put up more kind of things, more kinds of flags to get to encourage an engaged audience. So one thing that we kind of thought of for this redesign is putting our website into campaign mode. So you'll see down here, this is a video page again. This is a little campaign lorem ipsum pledge drive that we have. That's a joke. Lorem ipsum. But again, this is very similar to the way that the VMS was placed on our website, where it's a kind of ribbon at the bottom. We kind of thought to do something that mirrored that. When we are in a campaign mode, or when we are promoting something, we're promoting a new season, that we have that flag come up site-wide throughout all the pages, and hope that our visitors respond on that. So, thank you.
Okay, so I'm Sarah Wambold. I'm the Director of Digital Media at the Clifford Still Museum, and as Marty has mentioned, we co-led this project. It was really my task to navigate the minefield of the rabbit hole that is this huge data set. So I'm going to talk about the survey overall, and this is kind of how things stack up in aggregate. We had 23 institutions. It was 513 weeks of data, a lot of records. There's a lot of crunching, a lot of reports. And this is how each of these types maps to the survey responses. So I think Susan was mentioning the facilitator type to plan an activity for my family or friends. As many people have mentioned, I sort of called these folks, the survey respondents, the kind of engaged user. They go deeper and spend more time on these sites. So pages per session is between 1 and 2 for site visitation overall for these time periods. VMS respondents are consistently going 5+ pages deep, some as high as 8 to 11. The session durations are also higher. Again, the average for total visitation on these sites for the time period is about 2 minutes, which is pretty consistent with most Google Analytics that I've seen for any institution. And VMS respondents are averaging much higher dwell times on these pages. So what I did, when I pulled all this data together and exported it, I worked with a company in Seattle called Schema to build a dashboard for the survey so that I could see the individual pie charts and start to put like things together. It was a very Sesame Street-like activity. So, and it was surprising to me because I found that like institutions had like pie sets. So here we have Portland, AGO, and DeYoung, the encyclopedic institutions in the study, and this is how their pie charts stack up. Heavy on the facilitator, which you've already heard. We've got that Explorer segment and the professional segment in there. I took a look at the page view activity for these 3 institutions to kind of look at what the difference was in Explorer versus Facilitator. So they're kind of alike in their motivations. Facilitator was visit pages, exhibition pages, membership got in the top 10 quite often. And the Explorers were mostly exhibition pages and collection pages. A couple of visits, so it's like a slightly different motivation that proved true through the study in aggregate. So this was a surprising finding. Santa Cruz Museum of Art and History and Houston Craft ended up with very similar pie set to Aspen. So I've been kind of scratching my head about why that might be the case. I looked at the Behave page view, top 10 page views for each of these institutions, and this professional segment, which is the largest segment for these three, breaks down into people looking for jobs and artists looking for opportunities. And in the case of Santa Cruz, it also included people in the community looking for opportunities. I've had a couple of conversations with Jenny Lee, who happens to be here from Houston Craft. And of course, Marty does work for the MA. And we know from the kind of outreach that museum does, the branding, the communication that they do, that they are very focused on bringing people in from the community and participation. So for me, Aspen is the outlier here. I live in Denver. I've been to Aspen a few times. How many of you have been to the Aspen Museum? Just show of hands. How many of you have been on the Aspen Museum website? Okay, well, professionals, good, that's great. You know, I don't know that Aspen is making the same concerted effort that like Ma and Nina Simon and Houston Craft are making. So this is a little bit curious to me. Just a breakdown of what the pages are. Again, a lot of looking for jobs, a lot of job seekers. So then we have a big group that are all kind of similar pie sets. I'm calling these the contemporary programmers, right? Let's see, the CAM St. Louis, and I tried to kind of put them in order of the most like and pair them off. So CAM St. Louis, MCA Denver, and YBCA, I believe, are non-collecting institutions, which I think is kind of interesting. ICA Boston was non-collecting until 2006. Now they are collecting. Interestingly, they're the most similar to the encyclopedic institutions, which obviously have big collections. They have a bigger facilitator type. I don't know if maybe their branding strategies changed around the time that they started collecting, and maybe that's had an impact on how they attract people to their site. The two Nashers, interestingly, are very similar. We have Nasher at Duke University and also Nasher Sculpture, which we heard from Jacques. And, of course, the Warhol, which, again, a contemporary program, right? Did this one come up? I don't know what the hell is going on here. So maybe you guys can help me unpack this. Hammer has a pretty similar pie set to Warhol, and I was like, okay, well, that kind of makes sense. I was thinking maybe Hammer's kind of like Nasher at Duke, right? University museums. It's pretty nuanced when you get to this level and you're looking at how many and what percentages. But yeah, Manil and Holocaust are pretty similar in their primary. I don't know why that would be the case. So if you have any theories on that, you just let me know. And these are the anomalies. The Powerhouse Museum is a science institution, but it looks most like an encyclopedic institution, right? It's most similar to the very first slide I showed, which was Portland Museum of Art, DeYoung, and AGO. Art 21, we talked about why that one was kind of anomalous. But I think a really valuable one to include in the study for the reasons that Jonathan mentioned, right? It's a content-heavy site. And I think a lot of us who are looking to redesign our sites or support different types of users can look to what the dwell times are on some of your pages and figure out how you're getting people to those pages and what you have there to serve them. I can speak a little bit to the Clifford Still Museum, since I work there. It's really interesting to me that the recharger segment is the biggest slice of the pie in the whole study for any museum, is that this segment of recharger on CSM. And I have a theory as to why. So if any of you have been to Denver, you may have come to the Clifford Still Museum. We've been open for 5 years. We can only show the artwork of Clifford Still.
who is an abstract expressionist painter. We have a gorgeous building that was designed around that collection. And it was a real priority for the director to market the Clifford Still Museum as a place of contemplation. And Marty and I were on the team that did the website redesign 2 years ago. And the homepage is beautiful pictures of the outside of the building, beautiful pictures of the inside of the building, the galleries, and it's this very contemplative, thoughtful kind of experience that we're trying to put forward on those pages. So I thought that that was kind of interesting that we got a lot of this recharger segment, which is in support of that. So I think the marketing of that has taken hold, and now it's interesting that I'm inside the organization and we're having conversations about showing more people in the galleries and kind of activating those spaces. So I think things are going to take a little shift with the Clifford Still marketing efforts, and we're going to be using this study to inform that. So one last thing to mention here, the entire data set is available on this dashboard that I mentioned at the top of my presentation. You can access it at this link right here. I would love to have your theories on why some of these things look alike. So you can access it down here. It's a beautiful dashboard that allows you to kind of dig into the segments a little bit. You can certainly use filters to compare different museums. And I need to shout out to Schema Design in Seattle for putting this together for us for free. So that's the end of our presentations. All of our Twitter handles are here. Please tweet at us any questions that you have. The data it's a lot of data to manage, and so it'd be great to have questions or theories from you guys that we can kind of dive into. And
I have a theory about the hammer. It's because of our programs. There's so many programs, and there's a lot of people. Should we use your mic?
Yep.
Is it live? Yeah. So at the Hammer, we have those programs, more than 300 a year. There's people who come to the Hammer for the programs and don't even know we have a museum. So they're like very separate audiences. So I think it's very possible that the program attendees are skewing this, and those people tended to be explorers. I think. I think they were in the explorer camp.
yeah, that makes sense.
So we have 4 minutes. Take a question.
So I just think this is such an amazing idea of taking museums and bringing everyone together around a shared cause, just to learn more about each other. And I'm wondering what your plans are next, if you're going to keep this up or try something else, or just play with data forever.
Well, I would mention the if there are any institutions that are interested in running this survey, we have a GitHub repository of the survey itself, and it is something that if you wanted to run this survey on your site, you can, and I encourage you to do so. And then you could contribute your data to this, and we could do comparisons there. I think we've just entered into this analysis phase of it, and
I think that it would be great to develop the dashboard a little bit further, since it is on a public site that everyone can look at. So right now it gives a pretty top-level view of things, and they're kind of working out the kinks in some of the deeper dives. But I'm really interested to get the data out and figure out what questions people have, what trends they're seeing on their own sites, and if that proves true in an aggregated form. I don't know if Jonathan. So the question is looking at survey respondents and comparing it to total users or all traffic. 8% of the people took the survey. Got it. 8% of your visitors spend way more time than the average visitors. Like, does that continue even after the survey's been on, or do the surveys simply make them more involved?
Well, I mean, for one, we couldn't continue to track it because, since the survey's off, those classifications are gone. But I think it's interesting to look across all of our respondents and see a very consistent of the people who responded, of the segment who responded, they are the most engaged. We saw above average across all institutions that that page views are up, bounce rates are low. So there was that engagement. And so that's why, at least from the R21 side, we saw that tool being there as a kind of a good sign that if we popped something up and made it flash, that we're likely to tap into that most engaged audience. That was our takeaway, looking at our data and looking at everyone else's data.
Just you.
Cool. So my question is, and I'm a little bit cheating because my institution did participate, but like Alli was mentioning, you were saying that people were like, you can apply to online visitors, and then you are able to do that. Where do you think that, does it ever fail, or are we missing, are there groups of people, online visitors, that you think might be missing from this? Our motivations that might be
Yes. And we wanted to use Falk's framework for this study because it was kind of a test, and it became more about the institutions and this kind of collaborative conversation that we were having. But as I was looking at the data, I was thinking, there are a lot of activities that people engage in online, play, entertainment, obviously social media has a huge dialogue and conversational component to it, and that's not reflected in the survey at all. We can sort of look at some of the page activity to kind of tease out which visitor motivation identities kind of support the types of activities that are taking place on our website, but there isn't a survey question, obviously, that gets right to that. Are you here to play? But I'm not sure museum websites, as the main websites, have evolved quite to that place yet either. So it's an interesting chicken-egg scenario in my mind. Yeah.
Well, we're at time, so thank you very much, everybody. And thank you to the panelists.